Hello everyone. In this video, I'm going to be sharing how I passed the newly released Terraform 004 certification exam, one of the HashiCorp cloud engineering certifications, right? And I'm going to be sharing briefly, like at least three things that I did. Number one, I wrote a Terraform module to help me to kind of practice, right, while studying, right? So let me just quickly share that. Let me share my screen. Mm, So here is the module. See, I wrote the module, includes all these. So I know this is looking a little bit messy, but this is the Terraform configuration file. See exam practice. So if you click on it, you see modules, right? AWS infrastructure. And under that, I have my main.tf file, output.tf file, variable.tf file. And then I have under the parent module, I also have the main.tf file, output.tf file, then also variable.tf file and my terraform.tf vars to take the value for the variable. And then I have because I put the all these files, right? I don't want to, I just put them in the .git ignore, right? So let's just look at the main.tf file in the module. So let me open the module. This is it here, right? So this is the main.tf file. I'm going to close this. So basically this Terraform folder is to, or configuration is to create um, EC2 instances, multiple EC2 instances, right? And also you can use it also to create some other, resources, AWS infrastructure, right? So if you look at this now, this is the resource, this is the instance type, then the resource type, then the resource name, right? So yeah, so this is a data block, right? And then this is a resource block, right? And this the variable, right? So like I put the instance type, the count, and then the instance name into a variable, right? So this is a variable instance type, instance count, name, and all that. So I just did this, and that way I'm able to practice right along. So that's one thing that I did. Then also, if you look at the Terraform, um, documentation, right? You see the Terraform Associate 004, right? If you look at the exam objective, and the exam details is just for 1 hour. The exam objective is the exam objective. This is it right here. So if I click on the exam objective, that's not, yeah, this is it. So infrastructure as code, right? What is it? What is it? What's the purpose for consistency, for um, reusability? You can reuse your code. What's the advantage of it? How does it work? Terraform fundamentals, installing, installation version, Terraform provider, understanding the difference between Terraform provider and, like Terraform required provider. What's the purpose, right? So, and all that Terraform core workflow, after you've written your Terraform configuration files, what are some commands that you have to run, even if you make an update, like Terraform init, Terraform plan, Terraform apply, Terraform destroy, core workflows, right? Terraform configuration, like, should be able to differentiate between the resource and the data block, right? How do they look like? For example, if you look at this, my code now, look at this code, you see these let's go back here. This is how a data block look like. It starts with data, right? And then this is how a resource block look like. It starts with resource, right? You should be able to differentiate between resource and data block. So that's what I did was it's to be very, very helpful, how to use variable and out and also outputs, right? So like for outputs, you must have a value. So let me come to output. If I come here to output, so you see you must have a value. It's very, very important. Then you can also put description, right? Description is really is good, right? Good for good coding, right? But you must have the output value, right? So, so yeah, so if you look at the variable, the output, understand and use complex type, right? Like maybe objects, different types, object, map, and different types, right? Maps, list, right? So Terraform module, which is what I did, right? State management, right? Local backend. Like if you're on the CLI, you have a default kind of you know, a default kind of backend, right? A default kind of backend. But if you are using, you can also write a backend. Like in this case, I wrote a backend. This backend is going to store the state file in an S3 bucket, right? And the state lock in a DynamoDB table, right? So yeah, so understanding remote states, local states is very important. Describing state lock. What's the purpose of, state locking, right? To avoid, people just, maybe two engineers, at the same time, making some configuration changes and all that, so maintain infrastructure with Terraform, right? Um, and then HCP Terraform, what's the advantage of moving from using CLI to enterprise like HCP Terraform? Like some of the advantages like version control system integration, some advantage like that. You can version your configurations, your code. So yeah, so this is it. So let's just quickly talk about the content difference between 003 and 004. So if you look at this, you have 8D, 8C, 8B, and all that like that. So let's look at some content difference. So if I come here, you see for new topics, you have 4F, depends on, right? Like depends on a meta argument is used when you want maybe a particular resource to be created before another resource. Like for example, if maybe you want an EC2 instance to be created before an elastic IP is created, and that elastic IP is attached to that EC2 instance. So also like this life cycle rule, create before destroy. What is the purpose of this? Basically to prevent downtime, right? Like you want a particular resource to be created before maybe an existing resource is destroyed, right? So to prevent downtime, right? Validate configuration using custom conditions. Um, Describe how to organize and use HCP Terraform workspaces and projects, right? Like for example, each workspace we have their own state file, right? But different workspaces can be using the same backend. So understanding all that to really help you in understanding all this will really help you. So then also I used the code this code, right, is on GitHub, right? I pushed it to GitHub. You see, I pushed it to GitHub, and I also have a README file. So let me go to the GitHub. So I did not talk about this provider. Let me come back. Let me go to this GitHub, right? So this is the GitHub, this is the module, right? And then this is the README. Can go through it. I put some explanation there. Put the code there, and you see that if you look at this, this repo, I still made an edit to it like about 2 days ago, right? Just updating the resource name for my resource for the EC2 instance, updating it and all that. So I've made some edits, right? Made some edit like this, the tf.vas, no, not this one. This one is the tf.vas. You put this is where the Terraform tf.vas is where you put the actual value, right? The actual value of for your variables, right? So yeah, so then another thing I used was this guy, David Opola. He, I saw this on LinkedIn and it was very helpful. I went through almost everything, right? Just to kind of solidify my understanding, right? I'm going to share the link, right? I went through all this. It was very, very helpful. And of course, I also used um, a practice exam on Udemy, right? About 6 questions by, I think the name of the guy is Brian something. Yes, this guy. Yeah, this man, I used his practice exam. I practice a lot. In fact, I practice up to the point that sometimes I scored 100 over 100%, in some of the exams. So yeah, I went through the 6 practice questions and they were also very helpful. So these are some things that I did to be able to pass the exam. And I was able to, like I would say easily pass the exam. Yeah, hope this help you, in your preparation as well. Thank you.